سوف يعلمون أن نحن المسلمون قادمون.
بسم الله الحمد لله الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه. A severely contentious issue that Muslims in the modern world have had to face is the issue of the hijab. In recent years, several controversies have been sparked where hijab has either been restricted or banned in many countries, leading to a lot of discussion among both Muslims and non-Muslims. Hijab is portrayed by many non-Muslims as something evil, backwards, forced, oppressive, and something that overall goes against women's rights. Muslims, as they should, craft responses to these accusations and restrictions that come from these beliefs about the hijab. Many Muslims, and especially Muslim women, respond to these accusations and restrictions to show that it is not the case that hijab is oppressive. However, much of the techniques and arguments employed carry assumptions that come from a paradigm that is not Islamic. These arguments will be the subject of this video's analysis. A quick disclaimer before I get started. This is not really a criticism of the people in the video. Many of them are quite young and are probably spoon-fed these arguments by adults. The point of this video is not to discuss the technical aspects of the hijab, its specification, of the clothing and the behavior, rather just the arguments surrounding the hijab. The first argument is that hijab is an individual choice, something that cannot be enforced upon women. Rather, it is something that a woman should wear of her own free choice, and if she does not wear the hijab, then she is free to do so.
What made you want to take off the hijab?
There's a lot of pressure to wear it from people, and there's a lack of an informed decision based on your own ideals. I just wanted to get a clean slate and find out for myself if it was my choice, because I didn't get that opportunity.
Connotations of, she's wearing niqab, she can't talk for herself, or she's wearing niqab, her husband, her dad, I'm not married by the way, but are forcing her to dress this certain way, right? Or she's been brainwashed into thinking that this is her right or this is her choice, but it is my choice. That's the point of being a feminist, right? It has to be your choice for it to be fully called like your freedom of expression. For me, with the intentions of it being that it's my choice, the significance that I see is that women shedding those connotations, right?
It's up to me to define what I choose to do with my body. And it's up to you, up to everyone around me, to not tell me what I should and shouldn't be doing, to not dismiss my intelligence, but to accept it, to acknowledge it, to respect it.
This line of argumentation is a clear appeal to the concept of bodily autonomy, which states that a human being has complete ownership of their body and may choose to do with it as they wish. This implies that either choice of obeying Allah or not obeying Allah is morally equal when it comes to our bodies. This is obviously an incorrect and dangerous implication. Rather, for a Muslim, there is no choice once Allah and His Messenger have given a command, whether related to their body or not, and disobeying this command is sinful and potentially punishable. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran,
وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مُؤْمِنَةٍ إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمْرًا أَن يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخِيَرَةُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِمْ وَمَنْ يَعْصِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ ضَلَّ ضَلَالًا مُبِينًا.
and the translation of the meaning is, it is not for a believing man or a believing woman when Allah and His Messenger have decided a matter that they should have any choice about their affair. And whoever disobeys Allah and His Messenger has certainly strayed into a clear error. This is not like choosing an ice cream flavor when you go to the store and the choice of chocolate or vanilla ice cream have little to no moral consequences. Rather, the choice has already been made by a Muslim to submit to Allah once they decide to accept Islam as their deen or way of life. As we have seen in the Me Too movement, women's un-Islamic choices to be alone with men have led to absolute chaos, and this is just one of the wisdoms of hijab and khalwa, which protects men and women from falling down this path. As for the bodily autonomy concept, There are several criticisms of this idea, and a simple one is that if a person truly owns their own body, then what is wrong with suicide? Why should people be discouraged from this action? After all, isn't it their choice? As Muslims, we should realize Allah is the one who has given us our body and has the right to tell us what to do with it. And even if we end up disobeying some of these commands and commit sins, it is extremely dishonest and even anti-Islamic to justify these sins as a morally inconsequential choice, which has nothing to do with the society around us. The second argument that is common to hear is an appeal to the concept of religious freedom, and that we as Muslims should be free to practice as we choose because of the secular society that we live in.
I am an Irish citizen. I was born here. Ireland is my home. I have my constitutional rights like everybody else does. I'm a human, just like you. So why should you stop me do what I want to do? I have my rights as well. Everybody has their rights.
Some women who choose to go to their House of Parliament have to sit in glass-enclosed galleries, apart from their fellow Australians, because of their religious garb. While United Nations Commissioner Tim Wilson said that this is segregation on the basis of religious apparel, the Prime Minister of Australia doesn't seem to mind. He's actually been quoted saying, "I wish people didn't wear it. It's so confrontational." Yes, because my American flag headscarf is very confrontational. All the bright red, white, and blue. Pretty creepy, huh?
Rights, freedom, discrimination. These are all vague ideas that are fluid in a secular society. There's little to no point in appealing to these ideas because there's no moral anchor you can actually base them on in a secularized conversation. For example, let's take a look at the value of freedom of speech. Does this include all speech? If you look at the United States, for example, there have been certain types of speech and expression that have been forbidden by law, since these have been considered harmful by the government at different points in time. Similarly, while there is a supposed freedom of religion in secular society, what parts of that freedom can be erased is entirely up to the government in a secular society. For example, the practice of polygamy is forbidden in the United States, even though religions like Islam and certain sects of Christianity practice it. Isn't this a restriction on freedom of religion? There is no such thing as absolute freedom of speech or freedom of religion in either a secular or religious society. This is because opposing ideas cannot mesh, and anything that opposes secular morality in a secular society will likely be outlawed. What opposes secular morality? That changes according to the whims and desires of the population rather than any set moral base. And you cannot play the game if the rules keep on changing. Islam also places restrictions and rules on other religions in an Islamic society. Books and treatises are written about this matter. For example, Ibn al-Qayyim's Ahkam Ahl al-Dhimma. So it is quite strange for us as Muslims to appeal to these concepts, as if we're implying that Islam's understanding on freedom, rights, discrimination is flawed, and secularism is the superior way to run a society. Is this what we truly believe as Muslims? The last argument that I will address is the idea that the hijab itself is a feminist symbol and an empowerment tool against the patriarchy.
I'm a practicing spiritual Muslim. But not like Lady Gaga says, because baby, I wasn't born this way. It was a choice. When I was 17, I decided to come out. No, not as a gay person like some of my friends, but as a Muslim, and decided to start wearing the hijab, my head covering. My feminist friends were aghast. Why are you oppressing yourself? The funny thing was, it was actually, at that time, a feminist declaration of independence from the pressure I felt as a 17-year-old to conform to a perfect and unattainable standard of beauty.
Of feminism. In reality, feminism is a diverse, beautiful movement in which women from various cultures, from various backgrounds, various religious upbringings can find meaning for themselves in what they're doing, can determine equality for themselves, and can determine how to advocate that equality for themselves. I personally consider myself to be a feminist. I know, scary, right? I'm not gonna jump at you all, don't worry. Yes, I consider myself to be a feminist, and what this means to me is that my hijab, rather than inhibiting me from embodying that feminism, further allows me to propagate that feminism, allows me to embody this idea that I am no longer a sexual object, that I'm a human being and I have a voice, that I am someone who is an aspiring future lawyer, an aspiring human rights activist, someone who already actively involves herself in social rights and social activism on grounds. The hijab, in my opinion, does not detract from that in any way. And yet, I am told by society that I cannot be proud of my scarf, that I cannot be both hijabi and feminist.
Appealing to feminism is a big issue. No matter which type of feminism we talk about, feminism is inherently anti-Islamic because of its assumptions and beliefs about the patriarchy and gender roles. Feminism is universally anti-patriarchy, and the issue is, when you reject patriarchy, you end up rejecting Islamic rules and regulations about gender roles as well. It's very easy to craft a feminist argument against the hijab. In fact, it already exists. The idea is that the patriarchal objectification of women leads to the idea of modesty and hijab, which are both tools of male oppression. Under a purely feminist paradigm, doesn't this argument make more sense than justifying hijab as an empowerment tool?
Wearing something that completely covers your face. Women have the right to choose what they want to wear, but my doubts about the full face veil were women actually choosing this, or were they submitting to some patriarchal model of modesty instead? And I think that
Feminism is not an ideology that we as Muslims should be appealing to. In fact, feminism is at such odds with Islam and the Islamic tradition that being a Muslim feminist is a potential path to apostasy. Most of the prominent scholars in Islamic history are male. All of the rulers in the Islamic Caliphate have been men. All of the messengers and prophets have been male. This, according to many feminists, is obviously patriarchal, and therefore Islam itself becomes an object of attack due to this feminist mentality of equal representation. What is the actual purpose of the hijab? It has very little to do with feminism or empowerment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran,
يا أيها النبي قل لأزواجك وبناتك ونساء المؤمنين يدنين عليهن من جلابيبهن ذلك أدنى أن يعرفن فلا يؤذين وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا.
And the translation of the meaning of this verse is, O Prophet, tell your wives and your daughters and the women of the believers to bring down over themselves part of their outer garments. That is more suitable, that they will be known and not be abused, and ever is Allah forgiving and merciful. Imam As-Sa'di comments on this verse and says, Allah mentions the wisdom behind that. This will make it more likely that they will be recognized as chaste women and they will not be harassed. This indicates that they could be harassed if they did not observe hijab, because if they did not observe hijab, it may be thought that they were not chaste, so men in whose hearts is a disease could harass them. Hijab deters those who have evil intentions towards them. If we want to argue in favor of the hijab in front of non-Muslims, this is not a complicated feat. Look at the destruction of family and women's happiness that has occurred, especially in Western nations, since the sexual revolution. The sexual revolution has thrown all modesty out of the window to give priority to individual rights and self-pleasure. Many marriages end up in divorce because of infidelity, and many children grow up to be mentally disturbed because of an incomplete and unstable family structure. This is all connected to the ideas of bodily autonomy, freedom, and feminist empowerment. The Islamic system of hijab, khalwa, and family hierarchy provide a crystal clear solution to this problem. And in fact, this system and other systems provided by Islam are a great means of da'wah as well. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين.
إننا منتصرون. لا لن يطول البعد عن نصر ولن نرضى بغير النور في الليل هدى. لن ننطفي أبدا لن ننتهي أملا إنا كبرق في السماء جاء ملتهبا.